All right, continuing with our cartoon jumble exercise. I have my layers. They're all in one file. They are not all the way I want them yet, but this is a good time to save my image and save all of these layers in here. So I'm going to say in Photoshop, File, Save As, and whenever we save something for ourselves that we're working on, we label it with our name and then some sort of descriptor. So I'm going to call this Cartoon Jumble. And we are going to save it as a Photoshop format, .psd. This is what we call a working format. It takes up a lot of memory, but it means when we click it, it will open it up in Photoshop and it will remember all of our layers and all of our options. We also want it to navigate to the desktop. So where should always be the desktop. And if it doesn't say that, hit Command D. It will automatically go there. Okay, then I hit Save, and then I hit F11 to make sure I see that PSD file on my desktop. So that is what I'm working on now. Okay, now I can keep on with my alterations. We're getting a lot of practice with zooming in and out using Command+. The only kind of tool we're using is the eraser, and we're keeping that at 100% opacity, 100% flow, at 100% hardness. And you don't need to erase a lot, but you want to erase the things that you think aren't helping your image overall. Now I'm going to move to the next layer. You can only affect the layer when it is highlighted. So if I have it turned on, but I'm highlighting another layer, I'm not going to be able to erase that image. In fact, I'd be erasing the layer underneath. So make sure that the layer you want to affect is selected. We're also getting a ton of practice with transform tools. And the shortcut to transforming is Command T. Trying to figure out where I want that black shape. Maybe I want to line it up with that curve. And I could go in, because I've rasterized this layer, and erase certain things with the eraser tool. But I can also, for more drastic changes, just lasso around certain things I don't need and hit delete. So there's a lot of ways to take information away. Okay, my next layer. I'm going to make this quite a bit bigger so that the line width feels similar. And then I don't really want her head at all. So I'm going to lasso around it and do a rough cut. Just by hitting delete. And then I can go in with Command+ and zoom in and hit Command D to deselect my lasso selection. Then use the eraser and clean it up a little bit. If you need to be more exact, you can always make your eraser smaller with the size. You can taper. And again, I'm just doing this all with the mouse. A stylus allows you to be a little bit more accurate when you're doing that kind of erasing. Something we will encounter with our digital art is that you can always be improving it. It's hard not to get sucked into details right away. But I'm trying to look right now just the big picture and get something I'm excited about. And right now this definitely doesn't scream any particular character to me. It's got a lot going on. And I'm on to my last layer. my last chance to turn it into a shape that I'm interested in. And at this point, I don't think there are any identifiers that need to be erased. All right. So now I have all 5 layers on top of each other in multiply mode. They're making an interesting design and a shape that I like. If I want to rotate them all and move them all together, instead of only being able to affect each layer, I can select multiple layers together just by holding down Shift and selecting all but my background layer. And then I can use the Move tool and I can move all those layers at the same time. If I hit Command T, I can also rotate and stretch all those layers at the same time. And now I'm going to show you some more advanced transforming tools. So once you've hit Command T and you have the transform box, if you right click within the transform box, you'll get your other options. And with multiple layers, it can be fun to do things like distort, which allows you to just isolate one corner and kind of stretch it to maybe make this a little bit rounder. So it's like nipping and tucking your shape until it's something you find really interesting. And then you hit return to do all those transformations. And the beautiful thing is there are still individual layers that I could edit individually, but by selecting multiples and then doing the transforms and the moves, I was able to move them all together as though they were one. All right, that is all that's required for this assignment, but I'm going to show you something optional you can do, and that is to bring color in. So we have done the equivalent of this kind of Arturo Herrera work, except in black. So how do we replace that black all with one color? Well, what we're going to do is another great shortcut in Photoshop. Go to your very top layer, select it. Then you are going to hold down the Option button and go to Layer Options at the top, and you say Merge Visible. Now the key is you have to hold down the Option button when you do this. Otherwise, if you don't, it will flatten them all into one background layer, which is not what you want. So you want to have options. So to give yourself options, hold down the Option button and say Layer Merge Visible. And it calls this a stamp. But what it does is basically flatten all of those layers onto one layer that it created at the top. Now here's the only issue with that. Because I did Merge Visible and I had the background turned on, it has a white background. So I want to then get rid of the white. So how can I do that? I can select the white with the selection tool, we'll learn more about that, and delete it. But to keep it simpler just for this first exercise, we are going to color it in a different way that doesn't even require us to merge them all together, though I think it's a good idea at this step. So, once we have the black and white image that we like, I am going to make a new blank layer on top. And I do that by using this little post-it note within the layer window that's next to the trash can within the layer window. That little post-it note is a new layer option. I could also go up to layer and say new layer. There's nothing on this layer yet, but if I want it to be this color, I am going to fill it with a color. So first, I go to Edit, Fill, and instead of white, I am going to select a color. And if I like the red look of that Arturo Herrera, maybe it would be something like this. Okay, and then I fill it at 100%, that color. Now how do I get that color to show through? I can use different blending modes. So multiply will allow all the blacks to come through. But I want to see if I can find one like the color filter that allows the color to come through. But you see, it only is coming through in the grays right now. And so that's where I can then play with the opacity of my merged layer and turn on that background. And that way I can fill that black line with the color of my choice without having to select even each black line. This is just a color filter on top. Now if I want it to look just like that Arturo Herrera, these are just all options for you, not required, but things you can play with if you have time. If I want it to gradate like it does in this lighting, even though this is just flat house paint, I can even fill it with a gradation. So let's take this layer again, put it on normal mode so you can see it clearly. Use the color dropper, that's my foreground color. My background color, I'm going to make a darker version of that same color. And maybe my foreground color I'll make a little bit brighter. And now I'll use the Gradation Tool, which you'll find under the paint bucket. And I'll paint a gradation. And I have a few options. Maybe I want it like this. And now, change it back to color mode. Play with the opacity. And you'll see that gradation, where it's brighter in the middle and darker at the edges. And if I want that even more so, I will take my color layer and I can adjust its contrast. Now here's the problem with blending modes. They're great fun, but it can be hard to tell what they're doing. So to see what I'm doing, I have to always take it back to normal and then move it back to color when I'm done. Okay? And we'll learn a lot about how we do color alterations and all that later. Here's another option. I could also find a color image to match more like this. So let's find a Looney Tunes color image. I gotta finish this up quickly. I want it to be high res. So I go to Search Tools, Size. Let's do larger than 6 megapixels for this. And I want something really colorful. That's Looney Tunes-ish. You can use Command minus and Command plus, by the way, on your browser to zoom in and out. So this looks great. View the image, got lots of colors. I'm going to save this to the desktop. Minimize this, bring this in on top. Turn off the color. Well, first I have to place it. So just like what you did with your line art, I'm now going to do with this. I might rotate it a little bit. It's still under the color filter, but I'll change that. Turn off my color layer. And now I want to convert this to color. And voila, I've got these crazy colors coming in, and I can play with the opacities, make it work. I might even try other blending modes besides color, like overlay or screen. And you can see how that color can get brought in. Yeah, I think screen is probably the best option, or lighten.